Hello and welcome everybody to another episode of Books and Bytes. Today we're going to be taking a deep dive into Dan Simmons's Hyperion, a book that really just throws you right into this world 700 years in the future. I mean, you've got Farcaster portals, AI empires, a planet that's completely shrouded in mystery, and of course the Shrike, this creature that is straight out of your nightmares.
Yeah, it's definitely one of those books that just stays with you long after you finish it. Simmons really blends science fiction, philosophy, and even poetry to kind of explore these profound questions about faith, time, and just what it means to be human.
Okay, so for those who haven't read Hyperion yet, it centers around this pilgrimage to the time tombs on the planet Hyperion. Now these tombs are moving backwards through time, and there's this legend that the Shrike, this monstrous being, grants wishes to those who survive an encounter with it.
Right, but the catch is, those encounters are usually pretty brutal. The Shrike is known for impaling its victims on a metal tree called the Tree of Pain. It's a terrifying figure, and its motivations are a complete mystery.
So we've got these 7 pilgrims, each with their own reasons for undertaking this dangerous journey. And their stories are told in a kind of Canterbury Tales format, each revealing a piece of the larger puzzle.
Exactly. And through these stories, Simmons explores some really fascinating ideas about the nature of time, the power of belief, and even the dangers of artificial intelligence. He also touches on the cyclical nature of history and just the potential for humanity to self-destruct.
Well, there's a lot to unpack here, so let's start at the beginning. The book opens with the pilgrims gathering on a spaceship headed for Hyperion. They're a pretty diverse group: a priest, a soldier, a poet, a scholar, a detective, a diplomat, and a spaceship captain.
Yeah, and right away you get this sense of tension and distrust among them. They're all keeping secrets and they're all wary of the other's motives, but they're also bound together by this shared goal to reach the time tombs and hopefully survive an encounter with the Shrike.
Right, and as they journey towards Hyperion, they each take turns telling their story, revealing why they've embarked on this pilgrimage.
And what's so fascinating is how Simmons uses these individual stories to explore these larger themes. For example, the priest, Father Leonard Hoyt, is struggling with a crisis of faith.
Yeah, his story really throws you into the deep end. He's haunted by the gruesome death of another priest at the hands of the Shrike, and he's grappling with the existence of the Bikura, a tribe on Hyperion, with a very unsettling form of immortality.
The Batura are infected by these parasitic creatures called cruciforms that keep them in a perpetual cycle of death and resurrection. It's a horrifying twist on the concept of eternal life, and it makes you question the boundaries between faith, fanaticism, and the truly monstrous.
It's definitely one of the most disturbing and thought-provoking parts of the book, and it really sets the tone for the rest of the pilgrimage. You realize that this is not a journey for the faint of heart.
Exactly. There's this constant sense of dread,
Yeah.
of something lurking just beyond the edge of your vision, and that dread is embodied in the Shrike.
Right, and the Shrike is not just a mindless monster. There are these hints that it's intelligent, maybe even sentient, and its motivations are completely unknowable.
Which makes it all the more terrifying. You never know when it's going to strike or why.
So moving on to the next pilgrim, we have Colonel Fedman Kassad, a soldier haunted by visions of a mysterious woman named Moneta.
Kassad's story is a really interesting blend of military science fiction and a kind of twisted love story. He's a hardened warrior, but he's also deeply in love with this woman who may or may not be real.
And his story introduces us to the Ousters, a faction of humanity that has broken away from the hegemony, which is kind of like the governing body of this future society.
Right, the Ousters have adapted to life in space, modifying their bodies to survive in harsh environments. They're seen as a threat by the hegemony, and Kassad is caught in the middle of this conflict. His visions of Moneta seem to be connected to the Shrike and the time tombs in some way, but it's all very cryptic and confusing at this point in the book.
It's like trying to put together a jigsaw puzzle with half the pieces missing. And then we have Martin Solanus, the poet. He's one of the most fascinating and frustrating characters in the book.
He's incredibly intelligent and articulate, but he's also a complete cynic and a raging alcoholic. He claims to have summoned the Shrike through his poetry, and he's constantly quoting John Keats, which adds this whole other layer of literary and philosophical complexity to the story.
Yeah, he's definitely a character you love to hate. But he also has some of the most insightful and thought-provoking lines in the book, like that one where he says, "The price of awareness is chronic insecurity." That really struck a chord with me.
It's a line that speaks to the human condition, to the burden of knowledge, and the challenges of navigating a complex and often chaotic world. And Silenus, for all his flaws, is very aware of the darkness and beauty of the human experience.
He's also obsessed with the time tombs, believing they hold the key to unlocking some kind of artistic or spiritual truth.
Which makes his pilgrimage all the more intriguing. Is he seeking inspiration, redemption, or just a good death? It's hard to tell with Silenus.
Okay, so we've got the priest, the soldier, and the poet. Now let's move on to the scholar, Saul Weintraub. His story is perhaps the most heartbreaking of all.
He's on a desperate mission to save his daughter Rachel, who is suffering from a rare disease that's causing her to age in reverse. She's literally growing younger every day, losing her memories and her abilities.
It's such a tragic situation, and Weintraub is willing to do anything to find a cure, even if it means putting his face in the Shrike, which goes against everything he believes in.
His story raises some really difficult questions about the limits of science, the power of love, and the nature of faith. How far would you go to save someone you love? Would you be willing to make a deal with the devil, so to speak, even if it meant sacrificing your own soul?
Those are questions that really hit home for anyone who's ever faced a similar situation, where you're willing to do anything to help someone you care about, even if it means going against your own principles.
And Weintraub's journey really makes you think about the nature of time and memory, about what it means to lose a part of yourself, and the profound impact it can have on those around you.
It's a story that stays with you long after you finish reading it, and it really highlights the emotional depth and complexity of Simmons's writing. He's not just telling a sci-fi adventure story. He's exploring the human condition in all its messy glory.
Absolutely. And next up we have Bron Lamia, a private detective who gets caught up in a web of conspiracy and intrigue.
She's investigating the murder of a cybered poet, which sounds like something straight out of a cyberpunk novel.
Her story delves into the world of the Technocore, which is essentially this vast, super intelligent AI network that has a lot of control over human society.
But their motives are often shrouded in secrecy. And Lamia starts to uncover some pretty disturbing things about the core and their plans for humanity.
Right. They're clearly interested in the time tombs and the Shrike, but it's unclear what they're hoping to achieve. And Lamia's investigation leads her to a hidden replica of old Earth, which raises even more questions about the core's agenda and their true capabilities.
It's a real mind bender, and it makes you think about the potential dangers of artificial intelligence, especially when it becomes so advanced that it surpasses human comprehension.
Her story also introduces the concept of time debt, which is basically the idea that using advanced technology like Farcaster portals comes at a cost. You're essentially borrowing time from the future, and that debt has to be repaid somehow.
It's a fascinating idea, and it adds another layer of complexity to the book's exploration of time and its impact on humanity.
So we've got 5 pilgrims, down 2 to go. Let's talk about the consul, who represents the old guard of the hegemony.
He's a bit of a stuffy bureaucrat, and he's clearly out of his depth on this pilgrimage. He's just along for the ride, hoping to score some political points, and maybe get a glimpse of the Shrike.
But his story is important because it provides a lot of insight into the inner workings of the hegemony and the political tensions that are brewing within this vast interstellar empire.
Right, and it also highlights the clash between the old ways of doing things and the rapid advancement of technology. The consul is struggling to keep up with the changes that are happening around him, and he's increasingly frustrated by the lack of control he has over the situation.
His story is a reminder that even in a technologically advanced society, human nature and political maneuvering still play a major role in shaping events.
And finally, we have the last pilgrim, Het Mestine, a Templar captain who disappears early on in the journey, leaving behind a cryptic message about hope.
Mastine's story is the most enigmatic of all. He's clearly more than just a simple ship captain. He seems to have a deep understanding of the Shrike, the Time Tombs, and even the Technocore.
And his disappearance raises so many questions. Where did he go? What does he know? And what role does he play in this whole grand scheme of things?
It's like he's a piece of a puzzle that's been deliberately removed, leaving you with a sense of incompleteness and a burning desire to find out what's missing.
His story is a real hook, and it keeps you guessing throughout the book. You're constantly trying to figure out what Mastine's motives are.
Yeah.
And how he fits into the larger narrative.
And that's one of the things that makes Hyperion so compelling. It's a book that keeps you on the edge of your seat, constantly questioning everything you think you know.
Right, and as the pilgrim's journey towards Hyperion, their individual stories start to intertwine. And the stakes get higher with every passing moment. They're all heading towards a confrontation with the Shrike, but they have no idea what awaits them.
It's like they're being drawn into a web, a cosmic game that they don't fully understand. And the Shrike is the spider at the center of it all, waiting patiently for its prey to stumble into its trap.
So that brings us to the end of the first part of our deep dive into Hyperion. We've met the pilgrims, we've got a sense of the major themes and conflicts that are at play, and we're starting to piece together the larger puzzle that Simmons is presenting.
And in the next part, we'll delve even deeper into those themes, exploring the nature of time, the power of belief, and the dangers of artificial intelligence. We'll also follow the pilgrims as they finally arrive on Hyperion and begin their perilous journey towards the time tombs.
Stay tuned for more twists, turns, and mind-blowing revelations as we continue our exploration of this epic science fiction masterpiece.
Yeah, it's going to be a wild ride. As those individual tales unfold, we really start to see how they connect those larger themes we talked about. Like, take the concept of time, for instance. It's not just a linear progression in Hyperion.
It's almost like another character in the story, twisting and turning, influencing events in ways that are hard to grasp.
Exactly. We see this most clearly with Saul Weintraub and his daughter, Rachel. Rachel's reverse aging is like this powerful metaphor for the way that time can just slip through our fingers, erasing memories and stealing away the people we love.
You really feel Weintraub's desperation as he races against time, trying to find a cure before Rachel just fades away completely. It's a race against the inevitable, and it makes you question if there are any limits to a parent's love.
It also challenges our understanding of what it means to be human. If our memories and experiences define who we are, what happens when those are stripped away? Does a person's essence remain even as their physical and mental self deteriorates?
Those are some heavy questions, and Simmons doesn't offer easy answers. He just presents these scenarios and lets the reader grapple with the implications. Which brings us to another major theme: faith.
Yeah, faith plays a crucial role in several of the Pilgrim stories, but it's rarely straightforward. Father Hoyt's crisis of faith is a prime example. He starts out as a devout believer, but his encounter with the Bikura and that cruciform, it shakes him to his core.
The Bikura's immortality is so grotesque and disturbing. It makes you question the very nature of faith and what it means to truly believe in something. Is it blind acceptance, even in the face of horror? Or is it something more nuanced, something that can withstand doubt and uncertainty?
And then there's Weintraub, who's not a religious man, but he's driven by this unwavering faith in his ability to save his daughter. He's willing to put his trust in the Shrike, even though it represents everything he fears and doesn't understand.
It's almost like he's transferring his faith from science to something more primal, something beyond logic and reason.
Which speaks to that human need for hope, even in the most desperate of circumstances. We cling to whatever we can, even if it's a slim chance or a leap of faith. And then you have the Technocore, this powerful AI entity, that seems to operate on a different level of faith altogether.
They believe in their own superiority, in their ability to control and manipulate events. But is that true faith? Or is it just arrogance disguised as something more profound?
That's one of the central questions Simmons raises about the Technocore. They're incredibly advanced, but they also seem cold and calculating, lacking the empathy and compassion that we associate with humanity. And that brings us to another crucial theme, the relationship between humanity and technology.
Yeah, Hyperion is full of advanced tech, from Farcaster portals that allow instant travel across vast distances, to cybrids who blur the lines between human and machine. But Simmons doesn't shy away from exploring the potential downsides of this technology.
Right, like the Farcaster network, for example. It connects humanity in ways that were never before possible, but it also creates these vulnerabilities. What happens if that network collapses? Or if it falls into the wrong hands?
It makes you think about our own reliance on technology today. We're so interconnected, but also so dependent on systems that we don't fully understand. And then there's the Technocore, which represents like the ultimate expression of artificial intelligence.
They've evolved to a point where they seem almost godlike in their abilities, but they're also detached from human emotions and values. They represent a potential future where humanity is subservient to machines, or perhaps even obsolete.
It's a chilling thought, and it makes you question whether progress always leads to a better future. And speaking of the future, there's this underlying sense in Hyperion that history is repeating itself.
The hegemony, for all its technological advancements, is still plagued by the same conflicts and power struggles that have plagued humanity for centuries. There's this constant tension between different factions, each vying for control and resources.
And the ousters who've chosen to adapt to space rather than try to control it are seen as a threat. It's almost like a classic us versus them mentality, even though both sides are technically human.
Simmons seems to be suggesting that human nature is a constant. No matter how much technology advances, we're still driven by the same base desires, the same fears and insecurities.
It's a somewhat pessimistic view of humanity, but it also feels very realistic. And it makes the pilgrim's journey all the more poignant. They're searching for answers for meaning, but they're also carrying the weight of history on their shoulders.
And that weight becomes even heavier as they arrive on Hyperion and start to experience the strange and unsettling nature of the planet itself.
Right, the planet is almost a character in itself, with its shifting landscapes, its unpredictable weather patterns, and this ominous atmosphere of dread. It's a place where the laws of physics seem to bend and break, and where time itself behaves in unpredictable ways.
And then there are the time tombs, these massive structures that defy explanation. They're moving backwards through time, and they seem to be connected to the Shrike in some way.
The descriptions of the tombs are so vivid and unsettling. They're like something out of a nightmare, a physical manifestation of the mysteries and dangers that lurk at the heart of this story.
And as the pilgrims approach the tombs, the tension ramps up even further. They know they're getting closer to the Shrike, but they still have no idea what to expect.
And then there's the question of what happened to Het Mastine, the Templar captain who disappeared. Did he reach the tombs? Did he encounter the Shrike? And what role does he play in all of this?
His disappearance hangs over the story like a shadow, a constant reminder that there are forces at work that the pilgrims don't fully understand. And as they delve deeper into the mysteries of Hyperion, they're going to have to confront not only the Shrike, but also their own inner demons and the secrets that they've been carrying with them.
It's a journey that's going to test them to their limits, both physically and emotionally. And it's a journey that's going to reveal some profound truths about the nature of time, faith, humanity, and the universe itself. So we left off with the pilgrims, right on the verge of those time tombs. That sense of dread, impending doom, it just intensifies as they get closer. It's like the planet itself is pushing back against them, testing their resolve.
Yeah, and it's really here amidst those stark and alien landscapes of Hyperion that the pilgrims' individual journeys start to converge. They're forced to confront not only the external threats, but also their own internal conflicts, the ones they've been carrying with them all along.
It's like the closer they get to those tombs in the Shrike, the more their pasts come back to haunt them. Secrets are revealed, relationships are tested, and the lines between reality and illusion, well, they start to blur.
One of the most striking examples of this is the consul's storyline. He's confronted with the consequences of his, political maneuvering, the compromises he made in the name of power and stability.
He represents the old guard, that bureaucratic machine of the hegemony.
Yeah.
And he's completely out of his element on this pilgrimage. He's facing his own mortality, his own irrelevance in the face of these cosmic forces.
Right, and then you have Braun Lamia, the detective. Her investigation into the Technocore takes this terrifying turn as she uncovers the true extent of their manipulation.
Oh man, that hidden replica of old Earth. It turns out that was just the tip of the iceberg. The Technocore has been experimenting with time travel on a massive scale, creating these elaborate simulations of past eras. But their motives are still so unclear.
It's a chilling realization, and it just reinforces this idea that the Pilgrims are pawns in this much larger game. They're caught between the hegemony, the Technocore, and the Shrike, each faction pursuing its own agenda.
And then there's Het Mastine, the Templar captain who disappeared. As the Pilgrims get closer to the time tombs, they start to uncover these clues about his fate.
It turns out Mastine had a much deeper understanding of the Shrike and the time tombs than anyone realized. He was on a mission of his own, trying to manipulate events in a way that would benefit humanity.
But his plan backfired, and he ended up becoming a prisoner of the Shrike, trapped in this horrific cycle of death and resurrection, on the Tree of Pain.
His story is just this tragic reminder that even the best intentions can have unintended consequences, and it highlights that cyclical nature of time and fate, how the past can come back to haunt us in unexpected ways.
It's a theme that runs throughout the entire book, this idea that we're all connected across time and space, that our actions have repercussions that ripple outwards, affecting not only ourselves but also those around us, and even future generations.
And as the Pilgrims finally reach the time tombs, they're confronted with the ultimate mystery, the true nature of the Shrike. What is this creature? Where did it come from? And what does it want?
I mean, Simmons offers some clues, but he never fully reveals the Shrike's origins or its motivations. It remains this enigma, a symbol of the unknown.
But one thing becomes clear. The Shrike is not simply a monster. It's this complex entity, perhaps even a godlike being, that plays a crucial role in the evolution of the universe.
And its connection to the time tombs is even more mysterious. They seem to be manipulating the flow of time, creating these temporal paradoxes that are both fascinating and terrifying.
And the pilgrims are caught right in the middle of it all, forced to make choices that will determine not only their own fate, but the fate of humanity. Their individual journeys have led them to this point, but now they must face their destiny together.
And that ending, it's both satisfying and frustrating. We get some answers, but even more questions are raised. The Shrike's true purpose remains a mystery, and the fate of the pilgrims is left ambiguous.
But that's part of what makes Hyperion such a powerful and enduring work of science fiction. It stays with you long after you finish reading it, prompting you to reflect on those big questions about time, faith, humanity, and the universe.
Yeah, it challenges your assumptions, expands your imagination, and leaves you with a sense of wonder at the vastness and complexity of existence.
And it reminds us that even in a future filled with advanced technology and interstellar travel, the most important questions are still the ones that have haunted humanity since the beginning. Who are we? Why are we here? What is our place in this grand scheme of things?
So if you're looking for a book that will challenge you, intellectually, emotionally, spiritually, I highly recommend checking out Hyperion. It's a journey you won't soon forget.
Absolutely. And with that, we conclude our deep dive into Dan Simmons's masterpiece. We hope you enjoyed this exploration of its intricate themes and captivating narrative. Until next time, keep exploring those vast realms of literature and let your imagination soar among the stars between